In episode 13, we're joined by Jim Miller, the VP of People and Talent at Ashby. Jim's background at Google means that he's the perfect person to answer the question on whether or not a human is really reading your CV at Google. He also came armed with data on how to apply for jobs and stand out from the crowd in this really busy market, as well as a bunch of tips around applicant tracking systems, CVs, and interviewing. This is absolutely not one to be missed.
The job market has changed since the pandemic, and so have the rules.
What worked 3 years ago no longer works. There's so much more noise out there and so much contradictory advice.
We're here to help you cut past the noise and decode the new rules.
And to guide you to your next opportunity. We're going to give you our shared expertise and help you figure out how to make the most of this post-pandemic talent market.
So join us on this journey if you're open to work.
Hello, James.
Hi, Matt. Back for what I'm now thinking about as the Open to Work Palm Springs sessions. I feel like the sunlight here and the different environment, I don't know, I feel like we're like on tour, except you're still in England and I'm in the sunshine. And we have a very British episode today.
We do have a very British episode. As we have now been doing for this new series, we have guests coming on to share their kind of perspectives. And, you know, so many times we're answering with it depends and based on our experience. And so we think for candidates, the more exposure and the more diversity of experiences we can bring in from different leaders around the world, the more valuable it is to you as the candidate. And so this week we have another Brit in another time zone who's also got their tea ready. I think I'm on tea, Jim's on tea, James is on hot coffee. So we're Brits all around the world representing recruiting. We have with us the one and only Jim Miller from the VP of People and Talent at Ashby. Welcome, Jim. As we have been starting these podcast series with our guests, you know, we think it's really important to kind of model these classic questions that come up time and time again. So, Jim, tell us about yourself.
Thank you for asking. I've been in talent for 23 years. I had 5 formative years working in agency for a Legis group in London, mostly hiring software engineers into media companies and some banks. Then I spent 15 years at Google. I was the first IC technical recruiter, individual contributor, technical recruiter in the London Development Centre when we opened that. And my career there was as a recruiter, and then I led a sourcing function across both EMEA and then Asia. And then I moved into a global role looking after all of the inbound applications that Google got each year. So up to 5 million applications a year were processed by my team. And then at one point during my time there, I was on a design team for building an ATS, an applicant tracking system, the tooling that the recruiting teams use. And I was very much involved in systems, processes, and recruiting data over time. And then I decided I wanted to lead a talent function fully for the first time. So I joined a company called Full Story in Georgia, where I'm now based, as the VP of Talent. And then most recently, about 15 months ago, I joined Ashby as the head of People and Talent. And Ashby makes an ATS, an applicant tracking system, the tooling for recruiting teams. So there's a nice full circle journey there for me. Yeah, 23 years in talent.
So you are literally the best person in the world to answer the question, why is the AI rejecting my application in the ATS? So Alderson James are one of the leading people and talent agencies. Since 2013, they've been responsible for over 1,000 people and talent hires, including one in a company that I used to work at. They helped me hire my head of technology TA. So I know the guys there pretty well. They've been responsible for scaling some of the most innovative companies in the UK and the EU. Also recently just launched in the US. So even folks in your neck of the woods now, James, can get involved for contingent, retained, and executive search. And they also now do embedded through AJX. So they can do it all.
I could answer that question for you and say, it probably isn't, because as far as I know, there's no ATS currently that has an AI that is rejecting applications from candidates. There's a few point solutions out there that people could add on to their recruiting technology ecosystem and tech stack. But no, as far as I know, there are no AI ATSs rejecting candidates. It's human beings looking at the resumes. And even during my time at Google, constantly answering that question, is a machine reading my resume or is it a human? I had lots and lots and lots of humans in many countries reading those resumes every single day.
I think it's worth saying that again, and it's something that I remember from our very first conversation, Jim, that whilst you were leading that function at Google, even people at Google and outside of Google had the question, how are applications been read? And you personally led the team of people, human beings,
Yes,
that review applications. One of the most tech forward companies in the world, it's still human beings reading resumes. For
human
now, it
beings
may well change in the
reading.
future,
Yeah,
but for now, it's still human beings.
still human beings, as far as I know. It's 3 years since I left Google, just over 3 years. But up until that point, and I believe it's still to be true, every single resume that was read, the first read, the second read, the third read, was read by a human being. And I led that team. And every day, I probably had to answer that question to somebody.
And while we have this topic, then, like ATS scoring of resumes, given that we're here, right? It's the natural next line of conversation. Like, what's your perspective? Does Ashby do this? Did Google do this? Is it relevant? Is it something that candidates should be worried about?
To be honest, I don't think you should be worried too much. So I think it's a natural progression of technology in the world that we're in, that there will be some kind of scoring, some kind of signaling that goes on from tooling, be it an ATS or point solutions and so on. So it's coming. I think that there are many, many biases that humans have, and that there are many biases that have been built into systems and tools by humans. So I think there's actually an opportunity to open up just the hiring landscape as a whole to a more equitable approach through some of the technology that's coming out. So in that sense, I'm very excited. The counter of that is I really expect us to be, and Matt, you've had a post on LinkedIn about this, I expect us to be in somewhat of a technology war between the applicant review tooling and the resume creation tooling that applicants will deploy. And it could well be that we end up with 5,000 applications for a job in the first hour of a job being posted, and 5,000 of them being absolutely perfect according to the AI tool that's supposed to read them. Then you're going to need humans to be the tiebreaker and to read all of those resumes. We might need more recruiters, not less, at this rate.
I think we'll end up going backwards in that future. Like, people think it's going to save hours and hours of time, but we'll just, like, people will work out, and that people will build technologies that will be able to beat the system, because there will actually be a system in place to beat this time. And they'll end up having to, like, more resumes we'll have to review manually. We'll have to do more work by recruiters on the back end. We'll have to do more in-depth recruiter screening calls. We'll have to do more of them because more people are going to basically fudge their backgrounds in order to be able to beat the system, in inverted commas. And it's actually going to create a negative forward environment. But you led, significant sourcing function for one of the largest kind of corporates in the world. Maybe talk to us a bit about how that works on the back end when a recruiter is sourcing, and how you as a candidate will want to stand out and ensure that you're going to be noticed by a recruiter that's sourcing your profile on LinkedIn or any other system that you think is relevant to talk about.
I think people often forget there's two ways to get a job. There's to apply for it, or to be found by the company. In effect, another human being discovers you, whether it's a friend you've worked with before and they want to refer you, or traditional sourcing where a recruiter goes to discover you. The mechanical element is they're writing Boolean logic, so logic search with brackets and all of these things and keywords to find somebody who has a document, be it a resume or a LinkedIn profile, that has the skill sets that they're looking for that the job requires. Invariably, they've worked hard with a hiring manager to fully understand the job description. They're creating and structuring this search to then go out, and then they're sending messages or even getting on the telephone for those who are slightly older school to get in touch with folks. Huge numbers of people to go out and do the finding of folks. And I led the first organization to really do that in Europe, and then kind of replicated that somewhat in Asia.
Maybe you could start by giving us an example of like what the recruiter's actually typing in the background to like make this Boolean string. And then also, how do you then ensure that your profile is going to be found and come up in the right searches?
An example search might be for a customer success manager in a SaaS environment. you're looking for the job title, customer success, and on LinkedIn there's a field when you're doing searching for job title, so it's all structured data to a certain extent. And then they'll be looking for keywords like SaaS. Maybe they'll be looking for someone with account management experience. So they'll put all of these different keywords into their search, and it will generate a returned list, prioritized somewhat by some algorithm in the background that has a list of candidates that meet those requirements. Of course, if you've only put your job title and the company you worked for on your LinkedIn profile, you're very unlikely to be returned by those systems and processes. And actually, this is quite an important point. And so I'm going to go slightly off piece from your question, but LinkedIn has an algorithm that it uses to send job adverts to you. And it's basically the same set of functionality. It's not a human writing a search. It's their algorithm analyzing your profile on LinkedIn, matching it to a job, and then serving that job into your inbox. So again, if you've got no information, no keywords, no discoverability, no search engine optimization way of thinking on your LinkedIn profile, then you're not going to get the well-matched job served to you, and you're not going to get found by many people. And then the next level above that is that you can indicate your willingness to hear about a new role. And I know you've probably talked about the green circle thing and everything else, but I am a massive proponent of using the green circle and marking LinkedIn to say that you are looking for a job. Because the first thing that the vast majority of recruiters and sources who I know and I've trained will do is go and look at the people who are more likely to see the message, open the message, read the message, respond to the message, and be interested in the job that you are trying to get them to be interested in. So please, if you're looking for work, let the recruiting population know, tell them, tick the boxes, fill out the information, put as much detail as you can into your LinkedIn profile. All of those things. Use the structured data, use industry standard terms as much as you can, because remember, there's a human who's trying to write a search to find you. Don't create very exotic job titles for yourself. If you're a software engineer, call yourself a software engineer, and so on. Hopefully that helps. But yes, green circle, thumbs up.
So having the skills written clearly into your LinkedIn profile so that you can be very easily discoverable is really important. And so let's talk a bit, though, about the Ashby data that's come out that you just published today. So this is talking about offer acceptance rates. And I think there was a couple of really interesting bullets that came out from that I think would be really relevant to the candidates. And perhaps that's a really good place to start.
The first one for me, and to be clear, Ashby releases all these trends reports aggregated from all of the activity across our tool, but from all of our customers. So we get really nice signal. And the clear one for me is that applicants to jobs are getting jobs far faster than sourced candidates and referral candidates and agency candidates and have been. So I think, in the peak hiring years, I've got it up on my screen here, it was about 30% roughly of job offers that were happening on Ashby were coming through job applications. And we've seen it at 40% or even up to 44% consistently across the course of the last 12 months. And that's an enormous shift when you think about the thousands and thousands and thousands of job offers that are going on there. And it really shows that no matter how frustrated you are as a candidate, how daunted you are by the numbers of applications, folks are getting hired through people applying for a job. And all of the talk about the ATSs and everything else, it is the ecosystem of applying for a job, that traditional method, is still worthwhile. And 40% of hires are coming through that channel.
Can you give us a sense of the size of the data set without obviously sharing proprietary information, but broadly speaking, how many customers does Ashby have, and geographically, where is that spread? And, at the most macro level, how many applications are going through Ashby customers that are using the product, just to give listeners a sense of like the size and scale of the insight that you're able to share?
Yeah. Well, we had some good news this week. Our company changed stage. So we published how many customers we have, and it's almost 1,400 customers today. And that equates to tens of millions of applications coming through Ashby every single year. So that's the scale of where this data is drawn from. It's not like 3 different companies, around. Just it's well over 1,000 customers and tens of millions of applications coming through the tool.
So the inferences that we can draw from this data set are significant. We can take them to the bank. We're getting really, really good signal based on the millions of applications of really the overarching trends in the talent market.
Absolutely.
Today, now.
That's why we call the podcast what it is. So when you look at kind of application volume data, you've naturally seen the trends and the peaks and troughs over the past couple of years. So maybe it would be great to paint a story over what's happened based on the data over the past few years, and then what this means for the candidate in the kind of next 6 months.
In 2021, there was this enormous push to hire lots and lots of recruiters, and especially recruiters who can source candidates, who know how to do that search and engagement and find. And I think that coupled with just the proliferation of users on LinkedIn and so on, really almost started to create a spam environment where people were being bombarded by information being thrown at them all the time in their LinkedIn inboxes. And folks started to look away from LinkedIn as a methodology both to be hired and to go and find folks. So there was really a movement at some point in 2021 where companies started to go, hang on a second, if we get the SEO bit right on our job descriptions, those job descriptions will get served into people's inboxes because of the same algorithm, the thing I talked about earlier. And now folks are being served in their email accounts with really, really tightly matched jobs that they can choose to apply to or not. So people have got this mindset to go out and look for jobs. Even if you're quite stable in the job, you might still have a look around, a bit like you'd go onto Zillow and have a look at a new house, even if you're quite happy in where you are, if only to see how much your neighbours' houses are worth. But that's the kind of change in society that's happening at the same time as then the downturn hit. So you've got people's mindsets being more open to apply to jobs rather than just sitting back and waiting for someone to get in touch with them. And all of a sudden, lots and lots of people out of work. And that caused this kind of impact with recruiting where you started to see the numbers tick up on, LinkedIn tells you supposedly how many people applied to a job. I'm not entirely sure that data is correct from my own testing on each one. But it went from the hundreds to the thousands for many jobs, to the 10,000s for some jobs. And so people started to get a bit disillusioned by it. So data like this, I think, is key. When it's from an independent source, like us, it doesn't matter to us at all what happens with this. But I think it's key to really reinforce to people that there is still that opportunity and chance for applications, and it's becoming a more acceptable way of finding work. The old myth of great people don't apply to a job is really starting to be myth busted. But the key thing there is you can actually do less with more, and really how you spend your time as an applicant is really important for the same as recruiters.
Okay. So based on your kind of observations as both a recruiting leader and then also in Seated Ashby looking at the data, what are your recommendations for candidates on kind of how to navigate this and best prepare them for their job search?
First of all, when you're writing your resume, days gone by, it used to be just a vehicle for you to list your responsibilities, what you did in a job, and that would get you the interview so you could then explain your impact. It's no longer the case. What you need to be thinking about is not just what you did in the job, but how you did it and what the impact you had was for every bullet point. So, how do you get what did I do, how did I do it, and the impact I had into a bullet point succinctly? It is simply, I achieved X as measured by Y by doing Z, or if you're in America, by doing Z.
And we talked with Yasser yesterday about the exercise of conciseness. And I think this XYZ formula is really an exercise in being concise and as a structure and a framework for you to be concise in. And it also will almost certainly be something you'll come back to in your interviews and gives you, again, that's the STAR framework, which also gives you a platform to be concise.
Yep.
So this isn't rocket science, right? Like people have been there and done this for decades, is to your point. And can be a really easy to follow methodology for anyone who, no matter where you are in your career.
Your time is valuable. Don't waste your time applying for jobs that are not a match to your skill set. To take that a step forward, don't just read the job title. Read the job description and in particular the minimum requirements. Candidates, read the requirements, not just the job title, because you're wasting your time if you're only looking at the job title. Tailor your application and your resume to make sure you are showing the evidence of meeting the minimum requirements in plain language, clearly on your CV. Be careful. If you change the job titles on your resume to align to a job you're applying for and forget to change the content, your resume could say, I'm an accomplished seller in the first line, and yet all the way through your resume it says customer success manager because you're applying to a customer success manager role. You'd be amazed how many times I see that. Make sure your LinkedIn profile and your resume match. Recruiters will look, they'll compare and contrast. And if your resume looks like the one that's been stretched truthways, then they probably will question your integrity before you even get into the interview process. Put an end date on the roles on your resume if you have finished a role. There's nothing worse than being in an interview and then having to justify, actually, yeah, I left that role 6 months ago. It doesn't tend to go well. And then finally, fill out the questions that you get asked in an application honestly. And those application forms that you get on job description, on different ATSs now, people actually do read those. And if you just put a couple of dots in, then they won't go through. And one more thing on don't apply for jobs that you're not right for. There's often application limits per human. If you apply to all three on the first day and then your dream job comes open tomorrow, you're not going to get that role because that role will be closed by the time you're allowed to get back into it. So stop applying for jobs that you've got no chance of getting. Wait for the right role to come along and put all of your efforts behind that. Use your time wisely.
There's so many really good takeaways there. I mean, we could talk about each one of those points, I think, in a lot of detail. It's much, much better for you to spend more time building a really good application and really focusing on finding the right job and putting effort into that versus spending the same amount of time applying for hundreds, if not thousands of jobs, or even paying a third-party service to do that on your behalf in some circumstances. Like, if you actioned each one of these tips, using the XYZ formula, applying for the right jobs for you, like customizing your CV for using similar language and customizing your CV for the job that you're applying to, you will drastically increase your chance of the role you're applying for being the right role for you. And that is ultimately a much better use of your time than applying for hundreds of irrelevant roles.
I just love that everything that you've said is supported by data. And so much of what Matt and I share on this podcast is our advice and recommendations based on the data sets available to us. So the insights that we have from the organizations that we've worked for in the different geographies and territories. And what's great about your insight is that, you've worked for a very, very large organization. And now you have insight based on 1,400 organizations and tens of millions of applications. And so folks can have a high degree of confidence in the insights that you're sharing that, based on this very large data set, everything you're saying concurs with the advice that we've been giving about how best to spend your time as an applicant. Is so valuable.
And that the candidates are in control. You are in control of your destiny. Not a machine and not other humans. You are. It's just based on your choices. The right jobs are few and far between, even in a booming market for you. If you think about all of the things that restrict your choices, from geography to level of experience and so on and so forth, you've really got a far smaller pool of jobs than perhaps your optimistic mind thinks about. So taking control, recognizing that, and putting your best effort into every single application, you will maximize your opportunity and be in control. If you don't have that mindset and you decide to throw mud at the wall, you're going to reduce your opportunity in getting the right job by applying to jobs that really you've got no chance of getting, that other people are spending far more time tailoring their application for because they're following the other methodology. So you're being beaten at the same game by people who are doing the thing that you could have chosen to do. And you'll miss out on your perfect role for the same reasons. So yeah, control your own destiny.
I love that. And we'll leave it there. But there's so many takeaways. So as we like to do with all of our guests, we like to wrap up by asking them a question that was left by the person before. So the question that was left for you, Jim, to answer, as if you were responding in an interview, is: tell me a mistake you made you don't regret.
I spent too long regretting something. That was the mistake I made. About 13 years ago, I was an interim person in a job for about 12 months. And at no stage during that time did I stick my hand up and say, I want this job permanently. I think I'm doing a good job. Why can't I do it? And the very day that I thought I was going to get announced into that role, ever the optimist, somebody else was announced in that position. And they didn't even think to tell me that that was what the announcement was going to be. And I sat there thinking, this is them saying, congratulations, thank you for that year doing an extra job. This is yours. And I spent a long time regretting that, and I thought it was a mistake. And I wouldn't be where I am now had I got the job and had I asked for it. So my mistake that I don't regret is actually avoiding regret. If you catch my drift, I spent too long regretting, and now I don't regret not asking because it turned out well. So get rid of that emotion of regret. Don't second guess yourself. Don't overanalyze the decisions you make. Look forward, be positive, and carry on with the pathway that's been put in front of you rather than constantly looking backwards.
100% aligns with my worldview that everything does happen for a reason at the time that it's supposed to happen and in the order that it's supposed to happen. And yeah, the universe had a plan for you, and you ultimately ended up here in the US at the right time on the right path. And the same thing, I believe, was true.
What is the question you're going to leave?
What skill did you learn in your first job, in your current career path, that you still use every day today?
Yeah, I love that. It's a really good. It's a really good question. It's what, as ever, I'm immediately going into my brain and thinking, how would I answer this? I'm going to have to create a little bank of responses to these. But Jim, thank you so much today. This was a super interesting episode. Loved all the data you brought to the table. Loved all of your insights on, and I think candidates will take a lot of value from this episode. So just thank you so much. And where can we find you in the meantime if people want to follow you or interact with you online? Where can we find
LinkedIn.
you?
I'm Jim Miller. I work for Ashby. My LinkedIn URL is J and then some M's. I think it's about 20, but I haven't counted them lately. My business card has the M's going off the side because it wasn't long enough. But yeah, you can find me Jim Miller, and I work for Ashby.
Awesome. And thank you, listeners, for tuning into this one today. So as ever, we're here to kind of help you navigate this kind of challenging job market. We want to hear from you and hear questions for our guests as well. There are more guests on their way. Such an awesome lineup in the next couple of weeks. So you can write into us at opentoworkpod@gmail.com. And as ever, please like and subscribe and share, right? We're here to help. That's ultimately the fundamental aim of this podcast. So by liking it, by sharing it with others who are also going through this journey, you are kind of helping other people around the world in navigating this challenging job market. So thanks very much again. James, where can we find you as ever? Forbes, I presume?
For sure. I just want to say this is definitely one for the archives. Thank you, Jim, for sharing such great advice, data backed. You get the open to work seal of approval. And yeah, you can find me every Wednesday in Forbes, and you can find me every day on LinkedIn.
Fantastic. Okay, well, we'll see you next time. And Jim, thanks again.
My pleasure. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Cheers.
Jim.